Ukrainian soldiers say more weapons are urgently needed on the Donetsk front line as Russia appears to ready itself for more attacks. A new fast-growing wind-driven wildfire has broken out in mountains north of Los Angeles, triggering more evacuations. Donald Trump sat down with Fox News' Sean Hannity to give his first interview as US president.
Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk says Europe must defend itself and encourages member states to boost military spending.
Ukrainian soldiers fighting on the front lines in Donetsk and the Donbass region say more weapons are urgently needed to fend off Russian aggression and territorial advances. They say the Kremlin is accumulating its forces, likely readying itself for further assaults and occupation of territory. The soldiers say they need more NATO standard howitzers with 155mm caliber shells. They argue those are highly effective on the battlefield and enable them to repel Russian advances and protect their positions at range. Meanwhile, on the battleground, Russia continues to pummel Ukrainian cities on a daily basis. An attack on Mykolaiv injured at least 2 civilians, according to local officials. They say the drone strikes caused some damage to properties, resulting in a loss of power and heating to some homes in the cold months of winter. Another wave of drone attacks targeted the northern Ukrainian city of Sumy. At least 3 were injured as Iranian-made Shahed drones blasted the city, including a 5-year-old child. More than 40 buildings, some of them residential, sustained damage, as well as a production facility. Evacuations have been ordered for remote communities near mountains north of Los Angeles after a new wildfire erupted. The Hughes fire, which authorities say is wind-driven, has quickly grown, burning through more than 20 square kilometers of trees and brush in its first few hours. The fire also sent up massive plumes of dark smoke near the Lake Castaic area. Castaic is located just over 60 kilometers away from the Pacific Palisades neighborhood, which suffered the worst fire damage in Los Angeles. Some 14,000 structures were burnt to a crisp in the Palisades fire, which broke out on the 7th of January and continues to burn for its 3rd week. The Hughes fire comes as parched Southern California prepares for possible rain this weekend. Experts say even a small amount of rain could create new challenges, like toxic runoff from burnt debris. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass has informed authorities to prepare the city for rain, to not add to the ongoing crisis, and mitigate environmental impacts.
We are beginning in a proactive way in anticipation of rain to make sure that if rain does come, that it doesn't add further to the crisis that we've been in. There's a lot of hazardous materials, toxics that could go into the ocean. We want to prevent that.
In an executive order, Bass instructed authorities to remove vegetation, shore up hillsides, install barriers, and reinforce roads. The possible weekend rain brings the risk of floods, landslides, and mud and toxic debris flows.
Let's talk about
Donald Trump sat down with Fox News' Sean Hannity in his first interview as U.S. president. He spoke of his return to the White House, saying it took a lot of work, before proceeding to criticize his predecessor Joe Biden.
I felt that we shouldn't have had to necessarily be here. Could have been done, a lot of work could have been, it would have been over. We wouldn't have inflation, we wouldn't have had the Afghanistan disaster, we wouldn't have October 7th with Israel, where so many people were killed, and you wouldn't have a Ukraine war going on.
only the 2nd time in history.
The newly sworn-in president also said that he wants to reform the Federal Emergency Management Agency, as he accused them of, quote, getting in the way of everything. Though he did not elaborate, Trump said there will be big discussions on FEMA soon. He's set to make his first trip as president on Friday to survey damage from last year's hurricane in North Carolina, as well as the ongoing wildfires in Los Angeles.
Democrats don't care about North Carolina.
Europe was, is, and will be great again. This is how Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk emphatically opened his speech on Wednesday in the European Parliament. With remarks similar to those of US President Donald Trump, he made a passionate plea for ramping up military spending to ensure the continent can defend itself against its adversaries without relying on the USA's security umbrella.
Jeśli Europa ma przetrwać, musi być uzbrojona. To nie jest nasz wybór. Ja nie jestem militarystą. Polska jest takim miejscem na ziemi, gdzie nikt nie ma ochoty na żadne powtórki z żadnej wojny.
Tusk said in order to avoid a tragic repetition of history, Europe must come up with flexible and creative ways of financing military expenditure. But this effort could involve the issuance of EU-wide debt. Poland is NATO's leader in defense spending, with a projected 4.7% of GDP for 2025. During his campaign, Trump said he would encourage Russia to, quote, do whatever the hell they want to NATO countries that fail to spend at least 2% of their GDP on defense.
French President Macron and German Chancellor Scholz met at the Élysée Palace in Paris to speak of the importance of European sovereignty and unity in response to the challenges posed by the new US administration led by Donald Trump.
Unsere Haltung ist dabei eindeutig. Europa ist ein großer Wirtschaftsraum mit rund 450 Millionen Bürgerinnen und Bürgern. Wir sind stark. Wir stehen zusammen. Europa wird sich nicht ducken und verstecken, sondern ein konstruktiver und selbstbewusster Partner sein. Auf dieser Basis werden wir mit den USA und mit dem neuen amerikanischen Präsidenten gut zusammenarbeiten.
Macron also called on France and Germany to take a leading role in building a strong and united Europe capable of defending its interests whilst maintaining transatlantic ties. He also underlined that the Franco-German partnership remained essential for European strength and stability.
One of Donald Trump's first actions as president has been to withdraw the United States from the Paris Climate Agreement. This is exactly what he did first time round in 2017, although Joe Biden reversed the decision 4 years later. The goal of the Paris Climate Agreement is to limit the global average temperature rise to no more than 1.5 centigrades. Speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, the EU's Environment Commissioner told Euronews that Trump's decision is regrettable, but also an opportunity.
Well, first and foremost, we will continue to engage with our American friends and partners across domains, in the domain of geopolitics, in the domain of trade, but also in the domain of climate action. But also, this will require more assertiveness, more diplomacy from Europe across the globe. And of course, when there is a vacuum, others will fill it. And that holds good for us, but I'm sure the Chinese, the Indians and others will play their part as well.
Hoekstra added that the EU should not deviate from its path, which aims at significantly shifting away from Russian fossil fuel energy.
So what we will do is a couple of things in the years to come. You know, we will continue to double down on renewables, on grid capacity, on battery capacity. That is one. Secondly, we're going to be very, very clear on making sure we enhance our autonomy and decrease our dependencies.
The commissioner also recalled that China is currently responsible for 30% of global emissions and is therefore paying close attention to Beijing's compliance with its commitments.
As protests erupt against executive orders by Donald Trump to clamp down on the rights of immigrants in the US, Venezuela's president says the country is waiting for migrants to return home. Nicolas Maduro's comments come after Washington and the US Customs and Border Protection announced that the CBP-1 app would no longer be used to admit migrants into the country.
Migrantes saben que su regreso a Venezuela recupera muchas cosas. El respeto como seres humanos, pero también su derecho a venir a rumbear con su familia, con sus panas. ¿Cuánto sufre un migrante por allá? En Chicago, en Nueva York, cuando ve a sus panas jueves, viernes, sábado y domingo rumbeando aquí.
Millions of Venezuelans were driven from the country during Maduro's decade-long rule after facing political unrest and economic decline. After Maduro was sworn in for a third term, the EU and US both denounced his inauguration as illegitimate amid allegations of fraudulent vote counting.
Two people, including a 2-year-old boy, were killed and 2 more were injured in a stabbing attack in Bavaria. Police said a suspect was detained in the knife attack, which occurred in a park in the southern German town of Aschaffenburg. Train services in the town were temporarily interrupted as the suspect tried to flee from police along the tracks. The motive and whether the suspect knew the victims is being investigated by the police.
L'italiano è elegante, lo riconosco perché è elegante, perché è in armonia con se stesso, è a proprio agio nel proprio abito.
I think you can recognize him, the style and the passion.
I think yes. I think Italian men dress quite sophisticated and very nice compared to the modern fashion of just jeans and a sweater. I think they put a little bit more effort into it and you can stand out a lot more than the typical regular man.
A double-breasted jacket, well dressed. Well, I think that's how you recognize the Italian man, huh? And a cigarette in his hand, maybe.
I think the hand gestures, the way how Italians talk, and the elegance with it.
I'm not gonna lie, I have no idea. I'm not gonna be able to tell somebody apart. I can see like 5 different people, they can be from 5 different places, I'll have no idea.